the doctor said, well, there's nothing here. Your everything looks fine, and your ligaments are okay. Your knee's fine. There's nothing torn, nothing broken. We don't see anything, but there's this little, looks like a metallic object in your knee. Is that from a childhood injury? And Bill said, no. And that's what started this thing. So he had the X-rays. Bill had X-rays done of it from when he went in to find out why he was in this excruciating pain. And we took him in to Dr. Roger Lear's office, and we had him X-rayed there. And sure enough, we found the implant, or a metallic object, let's put it that way, about the size of a pencil lead in the leg. And we took several X-rays in there. Then we went and we had a CAT scan done of the area, and lo and behold, it's there. And just recently, as of last week, we went in and did an ultrasound, and sure enough, the object is still there. It is metallic. So that's sort of the backstory of what these implants that people are getting. The phenomena is real.
L.A., do you have any expectation of what you might find?
It'll probably be an implant very difficult to cut open. They also have carbon nanotubes inside them. They're highly complex machines, highly complex, miniature computers, very powerful computers. They do give off a radio frequency of about 330 gigahertz, which may be a clock speed, maybe. There's no way to prove that yet, but we speculate that it may be a highly evolved computer, 100 times faster than anything we have here on Earth right now. These implants are, in fact, changing the host's DNA. So, the skeptic can yell and scream and call me any name you want. I really don't care. Whether you believe me or whether you don't believe me, I really don't care. I'm on the trail. I'm actually in the field. I'm doing hardcore research, and the critics sit in the ivory towers and throw darts. Oh, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're speculating, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you get out of the high tower and come down in the field and look at it for yourself, and you tell us what you're looking at? So, based on the increase of UFOs to 2,000 a month, how do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile the UFO footage that we show of a Turkish UFO, which the two aliens in there? You really think that that's Photoshop when the Turkish government received the film and authenticated it and said this is absolutely real and that was done to the film? I mean, attack the evidence, and you can't. It's just unbelievable. It really is unbelievable.
We see this all the time. People of limited intellectual capacity to see what the real picture is. That's kind of my view. But go on. You're doing great, man. I'm telling you, this is fantastic stuff.
Well, I appreciate it. And, we're in the lab. We've got physical evidence. The bottom line is we talked to the man who this thing has come out of, and he says, okay, he's been abducted, and he doesn't like that, but he's been abducted. And, I'm sort of talking to him about it and saying, is it happening now? And he's saying it, no, but in his periphery vision sometimes he sees the grays. They'll kind of like flit in and out in his house at night or something, which I, of course, find very disturbing. And so here we have physical evidence. And if it was just one, you'd say, well, L.A. Folks, Lear has done 16 of these. I received in the mail a couple of days ago, which I'm actually meeting with Dr. Lear on Thursday to show him this. Someone else another doctor extracted an object the size of a BB. Gee, isn't it the same deal? From a woman who claims to have had an implant, had been abducted, that whole deal. So we keep getting these over and over and over again. It is hardcore scientific evidence that something is there. Here's what's strange about this, and Dr. Lear has shown me this before, shown Richard and I how this works. There seems to be like a secretion over the object, a gray type material, which a scalpel usually cannot cut. That's how dense this is. And it protects it, whatever this object is, and keeps the body from expunging it naturally. So that's very strange in itself. And the idea that it's giving off a radio frequency of 330 gigahertz is bizarre. The fact that you can take a common everyday stud finder and put it next to the object and the needle bounces tells us that it's metallic. The fact that it shows up on a CAT scan, an X-ray, and an ultrasound tells us that the object is real. And so when we remove it on January 4th from this particular man, we've got hardcore physical evidence that someone from somewhere abducting people against their will and inserting objects. And by the way, when these objects are inserted, there's no point of entry shown in the skin. That's high strangeness. There's no point of entry shown in the skin.
Wow.
There's no entry wound. How the heck did they do that? One of the most astounding pieces of physical evidence. Here's the backstory. There was a man who was abducted from a home, a bedroom. And when Dr. Lear went there, half the bed, the side that the man was on, was magnetized. It had a reading on a Gauss meter, which shows magnetism. The other half of the bed was not. Now, what does that sound like to you? One will be taken, one will be left.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that.
And the fallen angels, and this is what people don't get, they have the same properties as the good guys. So I sat down with a woman who's a hypnotherapist, and people, a lot of Christians, oh my God, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, it's not what we're talking about here. When a person is regressed, they're just basically relaxed. They are in full control of all their faculties. You can't be made to stand up and start cracking like a chicken or a duck or something, okay? Doesn't work that way. They call it hypnotic regression. Basically, and it takes some time before a person will relax enough to be able to access memories that are there, but in normal consciousness, he can't. So is it a slight altered state? It may be a slight altered state, but drinking a glass of wine is in a slight altered state too. So it's a very highly relaxed state of almost sleep, but it's not sleep, okay? So I was talking to her about the abduction phenomena, and I was telling her, are you aware of the similarities in one certain biblical text between what happens to Peter, this guy Peter, who's in a jail cell, and the modern-day abduction phenomena? She says, no, I've never heard the story. So I began to tell her. I said, okay, we all know Peter's in jail, one of the disciples, one of Jesus' disciples. Peter's in jail. He's chained to a wall. All of a sudden, an angelic being appears. Whoa, wait a minute, how did that happen? And where did it appear from where? He's in the jail cell. That's number one. Number two, Peter's not sure whether he's awake or asleep. His brain is really fogged over, and he's chained to the wall, but the angel manipulates matter in time and space in ways that we do not, and the chains fall off Peter. Then the jail cell opens, and Peter looks around and he realizes that the guards and everyone in the jail cell is completely switched off. They're all asleep. If you were a Roman guard and you fell asleep, you fell on your sword that morning. That was the penalty for falling asleep at your post. So Roman guards did not fall asleep. But everyone is switched off. Then they go out of the prison, and the prison door opens by themselves, right? Peter continues to walk, and the angel disappears. Think about what the abduction phenomena is. You're laying in bed, beings appear in your room. How the heck did they get there? You're paralyzed, you want to scream, but you can't. Now you're floating towards the window, but the window doesn't open. You look at the corner of your eye, you see that your husband or your wife is still in bed, and your dog is still in bed, and they are fast asleep. They've been essentially switched off. And abductees will call it switched off. It's not my term, it's their term. You find yourself being floated through a window, a wall, a ceiling, impossibility. Then you find yourself on a ship, and later on you're returned. The similarities between the modern abduction phenomenon and what we read about in that biblical account of Peter, one is done by a good angel sent from God, obviously the story with Peter. The other are the fallen entities who are there for very nefarious and malevolent purposes. They are engaged in some sort of a breeding program. My theory is that they are creating man in their own image. They're copycatters. We are creating the image and likeness of God. Satan appears and wants to create us in his image. And that's what this abduction phenomenon and this this mark is about. So here we have these stories, and Dr. Jacobs talks about this over and over again. In fact, he talks about it on film on Watcher 7 when he said, the first time he was hearing about floating through the window. So he backed the person up. Well, you mean the window is open? No. Well, you mean that you're going to open the window and then you go out? No. Well, these creatures open the window and then you go out? No. I'm just going through the window. And then the person says, gee, has anybody ever reported that before? And as Dr. Jacobs sort of says tongue-in-cheek, that person has no idea, but everybody who's abducted talks about exactly the same thing. Going through walls, going through ceilings, going through windows, the whole deal. So we're looking at entities which can manipulate time, space, and matter in ways that we don't understand, that defy our physics. And yet in the Bible, that's exactly what we see. When Jesus sends his disciples out, Peter, once again, Peter's all freaked out. He's been with Messiah a couple of years. He's got wife and kids. They got to pay the taxes. They got no money. Peter's not fishing anymore. He's with Messiah running around. And the wife probably goes, Peter, we got to pay our taxes. And Peter goes, Jesus, we got to pay our taxes. What are we going to do? And this is the humor in the Bible. I just love how Jesus handles this. Go down and catch a fish. Open his mouth. You'll see 2 gold coins. Pay yours and then my taxes. It's like, what? You have got to be kidding me. You see how supernatural that is? And what do you think Peter did? He probably took a couple of disciples. They went down. They're looking at each other. What did he tell you to do? Just have to go fishing. So he throws his line in, pulls out the fish. They're all looking at each other. You go look. No, you look. Okay, I'll look. They open his mouth up. Oh, my gosh. The first and the other guy goes, is there any more in there? Right? I mean, this is hysterical stuff. It's just hysterical when you really strip it down and lose the churchianity and realize that Jesus is just totally goofing on these guys. And they get the 2 gold coins and they can pay Jesus' taxes and Peter's taxes. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. So Jesus, how did he know? Where does it come from? It's absolutely mind-boggling. And what do you think the disciples did? Raised their hands and began to praise the Lord. Are you kidding me? They're laughing their rear endskis off on the beach or the sand or wherever they are. They can't believe it. But that's the kind of stuff he does, constantly messing with them that way. And of course, people said there was no humor in the Bible. So getting back to the story, okay, space and time and matter is being manipulated in ways that defy our physics. I think we can all agree on that. So getting back to the house, the Gauss meter showed that one side of the bed was magnetized where the man was and who was abducted. And on the woman's side, no magnetism. Isn't that odd? It gets better. The cabinets, the wood cabinets in the kitchen, they were magnetized. The avocado tree, it was magnetized. The earth around the house spontaneously combusted in front of Dr. Roger Lear's eyes. High strangeness, folks.
Okay.
But it gets better. Next to the bed is a window. And right next to the windowsill is a 4-fingered handprint. And the only reason why they found that is they have learned that these entities leave a trace material which fluoresces. And so they went into the bedroom at night. In fact, they went into the whole house and looked if there were fluorescent marks. And sure enough, they found them. And they asked these 4-fingered prints on the drywall. They actually paid the owner to cut the drywall out so we could take it into a lab, which we did, which is the first. And we took it under a scanning electron microscope with an EDX feature. The EDX feature shows what the material is made of. It's hard science, physical evidence, right? So we look at the material, which fluoresced in the lab for us. That's the only way you can see it. We turn off all the lights in the lab, got a fluorescent light. Oh, my gosh, there it is. The handprint's about the size of a child's hand, except the end of the fingers are bulbous. They flare out. Where human beings do not, these flare out. They're bulbous on the end. So the 3 fingers and a thumb. So we took it in. We took a sample, put it in the scanning electron microscope with an EDX feature. And the technician's there. And I go, what are we looking at? And he looked at me and said, well, first of all, whatever this is, it doesn't have any of the readings that we would see from if a human had put their hand there. I go, what do you mean? He goes, we have this on film. excuse me, I go, without putting words in your mouth, you're telling me this isn't human. And he says, yeah, that's right.